Something unusual for your consideration today. We have a warning from Europe. A European Catholic, who was the editor-in-chief of a major Catholic publication in Europe, issues a warning to his fellow Catholics in Europe and a warning to Catholics in Latin America. There are two different warnings based on the same problem. In Europe, in this article I'm going to go over, we're going to skip a lot of it to get to what his suggestion is, but in Europe, you're seeing a major problem. 1 in 4 families are having kids. That's kind of a major problem. The population is becoming lopsided. People are not having enough children to do the basic things of keeping a civilization going anymore. The governments of Europe can try to spend their way through debt to go get through the retirement crisis they're going to have, but there will not be enough Europeans on the other side of it to keep civilization going. And even with bringing in large numbers of outsiders who could at least work, not enough of them, nowhere near enough of them, are skilled. Their economy isn't sustainable. This author is predicting the collapse of civilization, basically, in Europe. And he's telling his fellow Catholics in Europe to go to America. That's what he's telling them. His warning for Latin America is a bit different. He said the problems that cause this in Europe are just beginning to show up in South America. But unlike Europe, there's still time to fix the problem. And he's imploring Catholics to fix the problem. Of course, the problem in South America is much like the problem in Europe. You have bishops there who celebrate the fact they've never baptized anybody, who are against spreading the gospel. Instead, they have a gospel of liberation, creating a better world that is popular there. And in Europe, it's not that much different, to be honest. Yeah, there's a few good bishops in those places. But the German bishops are just kind of the outlandish version of the mainstream problem in Europe, which is that most of the bishops see themselves as managers of institutional decline. That's what they see themselves as. And so this writer, this editor-in-chief of a major Catholic newspaper in Europe is telling European Catholics to go to America. The United States, and I guess to a lesser degree Canada, are the only places that he thinks the faith is being preserved and that people have any chance of turning things around. It's an interesting story, and I'm skipping over most of that just to give you the background. So we go here to Info Catholica. The headline, Europe will be destroyed. Warning to Latin America. It's written by Luis Fernando Perez Bustamante. He's a layperson, editor-in-chief of Info Catholica. And the wildest part of this is he's using prophecy to make his point. Biblical prophecy. He's hinting that Babylon the Great in Revelation is not some political system we haven't seen yet. That it's not the United States. You see that argument made. He believes that it's Europe. And he's telling Europeans that this would be a good time, European Catholics, time to leave, because he thinks even if there was a widespread conversion of souls and the system stopped doing what things they're doing that are feeding this problem, it would be too late. Here's the relevant part of his article that I think is important here. Can anything be done to prevent the collapse? No, it's too late. Even if all the perverse laws that have destroyed Europe were repealed tomorrow, there's no way to reverse their effects in time. On the contrary, this will get worse and quickly. A generation raised on aberrant ideologies cannot be expected to raise the few children they have well. This generation, born amidst various unnatural methods and including living sacrifices, will be the ones to get rid of their parents, moving from the self-voluntary ways of allowing the state to remove you from this mortal coil already present to promoted and then imposed versions of it. We're seeing that already in Canada. Economically, it will be impossible to meet the cost of pensions and healthcare. Government debt grows exponentially. To avoid this, interest payments will eat up a large portion of the budget. I'm not one to tell people what to do. I know what I would do if I could. I would jump ship to the American continent without a second thought. I believe Europe will be punished for so much institutional, social, and personal rot. It won't take fire from the sky, although it can't be ruled out either. If you want to call it a natural consequence and not a punishment, go ahead. The consequences will be the same. When Titus arrived in Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Christian community had already disappeared from the scene. Quote, "But the people of the church of Jerusalem received a warning by revelation before the war to leave the city and move to Pella in Perea. Thus the believers abandoned Jerusalem and were spared the disaster." Eusebius of Caesarea, Ecclesiastical History, Part 3, Chapter 5, Verse 3. "I know that it is not easy to say, leave your country, your kindred, and your father's house to the land I will show you." See Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. "But it will be worse to stay in a scorched and barren land." Everything that's happening in Europe could happen if it isn't already happening in Latin America. Unjust laws are being imposed there too. Children's education is beginning to be perverted there too. But there's still time to avoid disaster. Therefore, I say to our Latin American brothers and sisters, stop this madness. Don't stand idly by. Don't allow corrupt and depraved stonecutter elites to steal your future. Don't allow clerics who serve the satanic system to steal the faith of your fathers. You have no obligation to be in communion with ministers of Satan who disguise themselves as ministers of light. See 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 to 15. Quote. And that is a warning for us. We have right now bishops in the United States, in Canada, across the West, who believe that they are to be aligned with the secular elites, to do their will. Somehow the church will be made more relevant. And then maybe the church can kind of sort of make people nicer and thus save civilization. It's a gospel of niceness and going along and pinching incense to Caesar. And this editor-in-chief of Info Catholica, one of the most influential Catholic independent outlets in Europe, says you have no duty to be in communion with those bishops. You are to resist them. He is echoing the words of St. Vincent of Lerins, and when I quote frequently here, I recorded his commentary for this channel in full in various parts that took over a year to do. There's a playlist for that on this channel. I recommend you read it or listen to it or go onto Amazon and buy a copy of the commentary by St. Vincent of Lerins. In that work, he says that anybody who holds office in the church who promotes novelty, no matter what office they hold, you are to resist them and cling to tradition. It is this clinging to tradition that can save those parts of the West that are still savable. Both our cultural traditions that are, of course, right-ordered, as well as, of course, big T, capital T, magisterial tradition. It is the faith in its traditional belief, traditional practice, traditional disciplines, everything. And the evangelization, the spreading of the gospel that comes with that can save Christian civilization. That is his point. But some places are beyond saving, short of divine intervention directly. He goes over here, you see some details. But under the heading, what if they can't leave? For many, such a change in their lives is unthinkable, but they can cry out to God and do penance. They can live in holiness. They can bear witness in the midst of chaos and apostasy. The Lord does not abandon his own. It would be desirable for someone to play the role of Jonah and warn modern-day Nineveh. If that pagan city converted, who knows what might happen today? It is urgent to evangelize here and there, in Europe and America, here to save souls before imminent destruction, there to save souls that will help avoid destruction. Let us remember that Christ is not returning yet because he wants all his chosen ones to be converted. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some think, but is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to reach conversion. See 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. Let us ask the Lord to return soon, but not so soon that millions of souls are not saved. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. But this is not the time to lament the scarcity, but rather to work to bear fruit. As our Lord Lady said, do whatever he tells you, so we will do if God grants it to us. Peace and good. Luis Fernandez Perez Bustamante. He's speaking prophetically. He is telling those who cannot leave to cry out to God, to do penance. He's asking for divine intervention to save Europe from the fruits of its own ideology. Curious what you think about this. Let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. This will be linked at returntotradition.org for your consideration. If you would like to read it yourself, you will need a translation extension for your web browser to do so. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.